It's about 5 after 7. We'll get tonight's meeting started. Thank you for coming out to tonight's public information meeting for safety improvements on Route 82 in Norwich. This project has had quite a history of public involvement starting back in 2016. For those of you that have been with us, welcome back. Here again tonight to work through the process. For those of you that might be new in the community or new through our public involvement, thank you for coming out and participating. Our last public involvement meeting was in June of 2022. Subsequent to that meeting, we got comments. DOT was requested through local leadership to take a look at a reduced scale project, specifically with less roundabouts. That's what we have for you tonight in this presentation. The presentation will be about 50 minutes. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions till the end of the presentation. And then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. At this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sal Oresco, Project Manager.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and it was a pleasure meeting a lot of you at our open forum. Had some really great conversations, and I hope this is still informative for you. So today's presentation is going to have a lot of the content that we did in our previous public info. And I know a lot of you are coming back for the second time. So I just ask you guys to please bear with us through that, just so that we can offer an informative presentation to some that have been here for the first time. So today we're going to talk about our project handout starting off. There were a ton of copies of it at the beginning or at the entrance of the auditorium. If you have not gotten one, I'd recommend just grabbing one on your way out because there's a lot of content in it. Then we're going to go over our civil rights flyer, our formal project presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session. And I just ask everyone to hold their questions until that time. There's going to be, or there is, 2 mics set up on either side here. I'd like to just, when we get into that, I'll just swap either side to kind of be fair to everyone. So this is our handout, front sheet of it. Very important information here, all our contact info of this entire team. So I'm Sal Oresco, I'm the project manager. With me today that's also going to be presenting is Mike Larice. He's a project engineer. Off there in the end there is Matt G. He's a property agent. He's in our division of right-of-way who deals with all the property acquisitions we need. And then we also have Mark Lenters, who's been part of the team for a while. He's a consultant that the department hired. He's a national roundabout expert, and he's worked through us on the developments of what we have presented here and what we had before. Everyone knows Scott Butchie, who was here. He's now leading our state design unit as a principal engineer. So he's still involved and leading us and been very helpful in getting through a lot of the stuff that you're going to see. So in that handout, too, is a comment form on the inside. The back side of that comment form is already addressed to us. It heads to Scott, and it has Mike and I on there too, so we make sure we get it. All you have to do is write out your comment, fold it at the dotted lines, tape it, slap a stamp on it, throw it in the mailbox, and we'll get it. But we also want to offer other methods for everyone to be able to reach us. So on the right-hand side here, in the back of that handout, is again our mailing address. We have a specific email address for this project that you can use. You can also email me. Just make sure when you do an email, I would highly recommend putting the project number in the subject line. And then we also have the project website down at the bottom there. That website has all our contact information as well, and it will have the email address and content from today's meeting. So the presentation is also being recorded today, and it's being streamed on YouTube live. So the presentation will then be available on that website at a later date, probably within the next few days for it to get processed. Okay, so Title 6. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from the participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We also have a voluntary post-survey if you'd like to fill it out. We'd highly recommend it. We appreciate it. A lot of it gets us information on how useful this presentation facility was for you. There's also the website on the civil rights information. And again, this will be recorded. There is closed captioning on YouTube for different languages. So to start off, I want to orient and discuss or lay out where we're at right here. So the entire project corridor is in two separate projects, two separate phases. Phase 1 is 103-274 that you can see in the blue shaded area, and then phase 2, 103-275 in the yellow shaded. In between there, you'll see a green shaded area with an overlap between both projects. That's at the Dublin Street intersection. But the whole corridor is between the New London Turnpike intersection and the Asylum/Mechanic Street intersection. So this corridor that I just showed you has really been studied since the early 2000s by the city, the regional planning agency, and the department. As this design progressed on these projects, we've met publicly at council meetings. We've had a ton of coordination with stakeholders that included our local leadership, business owners, the regional planning agency, emergency responders, and even the business owners within the project limits. That ended up leading us to the public informational meeting that we had in June of 2022, where we presented the 6th roundabout design. Following that public info, local leadership relayed to us that the project was too large in scale, too big of a scope, too many roundabouts, too many impacts to businesses, and we needed to take a look at how the proposed project are going to impact utilities. So we took a second look at this and evaluated what we can do. That's leading us to here today. This time we're going to be proposing, as Scott mentioned, a 4 roundabout design, and Mike will go through that in a little bit more detail, or a lot more detail after me. So Route 82, as everyone knows that's familiar with it, 4-lane undivided roadway, 7 closely spaced intersections, heavily congested, causing delays, a lot of crashes, and we're going to go through that crash data as well. So, purpose and need. Purpose is to be able to provide a safety improvement, and we're going to be doing that in 2 phases as that location plan shown. The project's really needed because high speeds, there's a lack of turning lanes out there relating to the congestion, and a lot of it ends up becoming crashes with even those driveways that happen there. There's a lot of confusion with people driving, and a lot of times that with the congestion, people are just taking gaps that they're not familiar with or comfortable with. So up on this slide is a picture of Route 82, and every single one of those yellow circles is a driveway. Some businesses on this street have 2 driveways. And what does this do? It interrupts traffic flow. You get that gap. Some people are sitting there waiting to whether turn into or out of a driveway, and there's too much traffic on either way and 2 lanes approaching on either side, and they're waiting and waiting, get frustrated, and they accept a gap that they're really not safe. So this is a typical picture. This is at the Asylum Street intersection. This video here at that same intersection captures the delay of a vehicle. That red truck right there is waiting to take a left-hand turn. And that car right behind it just sneaks right in. A lot of that time that weave maneuver ends up becoming a sideswipe crash. Another example of that left queuing up, 2 cars at the end. Those 2 cars ended up just sneaking right in. Near misses. I'm new to the project. If you guys, people are here the second time and known, Scott has been involved with this project for a long time. With him moving up, I took over as project manager. And one of the things I said was, I need to go to the project. I need to check out the site. I need to experience this, right? Didn't take me long. I'm stuck in that left lane. This car right here, for some reason, decided to allow this car to execute their left turn maneuver while traffic in the right lane was flowing. So as I'm sitting here stuck, waiting to move, I almost ended up in seeing an angle type crash and a rear end, because that car almost rear-ended that car right there. This is not even a quarter of a mile from the New London Turnpike intersection, right in the project limits. 4 lanes of roadway. Even though there's a mid-block crossing right here, there's a pedestrian right here crossing in between intersections. Doesn't help that's a 4-lane roadway at a signalized, even if they have an exclusive pedestrian face across the roadway. It's 4 lanes, a lot of traffic to cross over. There's a lot of volume. That means a pedestrian's waiting a lot longer to cross that intersection. They just resort to where I can cross whenever I can. It becomes mid-block crossings. This is the same video we showed actually in June of 2022, and it's a perfect example of everything that happens at one intersection. This is again an asylum. This truck with the trailer waiting to take a left, that truck cut in there. And you're going to see this vehicle right here keeps itching forward. All they want to do is take the left, and they can't find that gap. Pedestrians are crossing either legs. Traffic keeps going up. So eventually, you get more weaving, and you get this truck that ends up taking a left-hand turn and almost gets into a crash. Can't stand waiting anymore. There you go. That car right there had to slam on their brakes. Traffic's calmed down a little bit. This car right here is able to make that left-hand turn on a red light. We showed a similar video last time of a vehicle taking a left out of the driveway. This is the Dollar General. 80 seconds to wait to take the left. So traffic coming into us now is traveling in the eastbound direction. They're waiting. They're still waiting. And that traffic is still, you can see it's a whole platoon of vehicles. They keep coming. They're not stopping. It's taken time for him just to find a comfortable time to get through. What you'll end up see happening now is when the traffic in the opposite direction slows down or stops, the other side now starts hitting them, and they can't. Now the traffic's picking up on this side, and they can't get there. Eventually, he'll make that turn. Awkward for me to say here in silence. Probably boring for you guys. Frustrating for that guy right there. That was not me, no. He's going to find that window, and there's a car coming up right here. Look, slam on the brakes. So this is crash data. Back in June of 2022, there was an average of 100 crashes a year over a 5-year period. That was from 2017 to 2021. With updated data to go from 2018 to 2022, that 100 went up to 111. We're still seeing 40% of the crashes at unsignalized intersections or a driveway, and 60% at the signalized. Over a 10-year period, there have been 15 crashes where a pedestrian or bicyclist was involved. All this shows the need for a safety improvement here. So let's look at a little bit of these crash diagrams that we developed. This is a typical driveway crash diagram at a driveway, really applied everywhere, but this is specifically at the Bank of America. Total of 14 crashes with 2 injuries. And the crash types, angles, rear ends, side swipes, they're all indicative of what's happening. The congestion, the left turn movements. These are crashes near the Osgood intersection. 28 total. 8 injuries, and one of those was unfortunately a fatality with a motorcyclist. This is here Asylum. Total of 54 crashes, 18 injuries. And they're all the same angle, head-on crash even, and there was 1 pedestrian crash right there. And that's what happens at intersections when there's congestion and driver frustration. People are speeding through, they're trying to beat a yellow. So the solution, same as we had before, raise medians with roundabouts. They both have proven factors to reduce crashes and provide a huge safety improvement. Raised medians alone, 95% decrease in injuries. That eliminates all those left-hand turns that come in and out of driveways. Roundabouts, 78% decrease in severe crashes. And this is data that we have from the roundabouts even we've built and roundabouts in the nation that have been constructed. We go back and take a look at them and see what is happening with the improvement. So this is just a couple of diagrams I wanted to share to relay the safety benefit that a roundabout has. So a typical four-way intersection, four lanes wide on the main line, just like Route 82, and approaching roadways with 2 lanes. 8 diverging conflict types, 8 merging conflict types, and the most important to highlight is the 24 crossing types. And those are where you get the more severe injuries. Single lane roundabout cuts the diverging and merging in half and does not have any crossing. Huge safety improvement. Slower speeds with roundabouts. And one of the benefits with the slower speeds that allows with the reduction in safety improvement is people have more reaction time when they're doing 20, 25 miles an hour versus trying to beat a yellow doing 50 or 60. So that person in that roundabout can tap on their brake and avoid a crash. But if it does happen, typically only property damage only. Nearby here in Salem, the Route 82-85 intersection where the department constructed a roundabout. Again, going back and taking a look at the data. There is an average of 22 crashes a year when it was a signalized intersection. Built the roundabout, updated data shows 50% reduction, now 10 crashes a year. Essentially 50% reduction. Injuries, you're averaging less than 1 a year. We do have a video of this just to show it functioning, how it operates. This is not sped up, this is not slowed down real time, taken with a drone. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Mike. He's going to go through a lot more in detail of our design.
Just there. Okay. All right. Hey everyone, as Sal just mentioned, my name is Mike Larice. I'm the project engineer, and I'm going to go over the project in a little bit more detail. The improvements we have for Route 82, it's going to be a raised median along the entire project along Route 82. And we're going to be converting 6 signalized intersections into 4 modern roundabouts. So, as Sal mentioned as well, we've had some design changes since we were out here last year. This is the existing conditions with the 7 closely spaced intersections, and as I bring in the proposed design, last year we came to you guys with 6 roundabouts, and the feedback that we got from the public as well as local officials was we needed to come up with a project that had less roundabouts and less impacts to rights of way. So starting on the top of the screen here, our new concept for phase 2 includes the removal of the roundabout at New London Turnpike. We're going to be doing intersection and safety improvements there as well as pedestrian improvements instead. And then we were able to realign the intersection at Dunham to avoid some total property acquisitions. And then on the bottom of the screen, phase 1, we're removing that center roundabout, and that's going to reduce the right-of-way impacts at the Willow Tree Plaza as well as Mount Pleasant Street. So this is kind of a bird's eye view. The phase 1 plan, if you guys were here at the previous meeting, you saw this in the other room. Something I did want to mention, because I've heard a lot of complaints about it, since we've started our public involvement, is these steep driveway grades that are out there right now. The average slope of the driveway right now is around 14%. Some are even as bad as 19%. And with the project, we're going to come through and flatten all of those out, and they're all going to be right around 7%. So you guys should see a good improvement there. Now I'm going to go over the proposed improvements at each intersection in a little bit more detail. I'm going to start on the right side of the screen there at Asylum, and I'm going to work our way down the corridor toward Dunham Street. So the intersection of Mechanic, Elizabeth, Asylum, and Route 82 is currently a 5-leg intersection and signalized. Elizabeth Street runs one way north to south on the screen. As I bring in the proposed design, I have a legend on the bottom right here. You'll see we have the red, that's going to be raised median. The tan is going to be a truck apron that's going to be utilized by tractor trailers. And then the gray that you see on either side of the road, that's going to be 5-foot sidewalk, and that's going to run continuous on either side of the road for the whole stretch of Route 82. One of the things that we've changed since last year when we were out here, we were proposing a 5-foot shoulder on either side of the road, but based off of the feedback that we got from the public as well as the region, we're going to be striping that as a 5-foot bike lane. And then these little gray ramps here, they're bike ramps, which I'll cover a little bit more later, but it's going to give bikers a few options as they approach each roundabout. Last thing I wanted to focus on here is in an effort to increase the safety and mobility at this intersection, we are cutting Elizabeth Street's access off to Route 82, and we're going to make it a two-way road. So vehicles coming down Elizabeth can come down Peck and up Mechanic Street to access Route 82. As we continue west down the intersection, or down Route 82, we get to the Mount Pleasant and Route 82 intersection. Again, is signalized. As I bring in the proposed design here, the first thing I wanted to mention is there's a bus shelter right over here that we're going to be replacing, and then we're going to be designing a bus pull-off so that when a bus stops to pick up pedestrians there, the vehicles on Route 82 can continue to flow uninterrupted. In addition to that, we're going to be proposing the raised median is going to extend, except there's going to be an opening right here for vehicles traveling eastbound on Route 82. They're going to have a left turn lane to make a left into Willow Tree Plaza. For those of you that were here last year, this is one of the bigger changes that we made to this phase of the project, so I wanted to cover that. Last year, what we proposed is on the top of the screen. Up here, we were proposing a roundabout. And now on the bottom of the screen is what we're proposing right now. The difference in design saved 17 parking spaces for being acquired from Willow Tree Plaza, and it also saved about 9,000 square feet of property acquisition. So those are probably the two biggest benefits of removing that roundabout. As we continue down Osgood, or Route 82, we get to the intersection of Osgood and Crane Ave. Again, it's signalized before I bring in the proposed design here. What I wanted to focus on is this westernmost driveway entrance. As I in the proposed design, that's actually going to get relocated down to the bottom of Crane Avenue. So I bring in the design. You can see that's no longer there, and it's been relocated down at the bottom of Crane Ave, and to help the operation of that roundabout. The only other thing I wanted to mention on this plan is you can see that this median looks different than the other three, and that's because that's going to be a flush painted island to make sure that larger vehicles can get into and out of Crane Ave easily. Continue down to the final intersection in phase 1. This is going to be the intersection that I showed earlier in green, where there's going to be work done during both phases. As I bring in the proposed design, this intersection is going to remain signalized. We're going to put in a small raised median here to channelize some of these right-hand turns. We're going to be adding a left turn lane here. And then we're going to be widening out this shoulder, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow vehicles that are traveling west on Route 82 to make a U-turn and head back going east. In phase 2, this is going to be a roundabout, as you can see on the right side of the screen, but in the interim between the two projects, we wanted to make sure that vehicles could make this turn. So at this point, we had our consultant, H.W. Lochner, put together a visualization video that'll hopefully give you guys a better idea of what the corridor could look like once it's finished. It's about a 3-minute video, and it's got some narration, so I'm going to go ahead and play that now.
The Connecticut Department of Transportation is investing in safety improvements on Route 82 in the city of Norwich. Today, following decades of commercial development and the addition of numerous driveways, the existing 4-lane corridor experiences a significant
So this is just another look at the Phase 1 corridor. I did want to cover some of the benefits we expect to see with the corridor, starting with some roundabouts. The tractor trailers, as you can see in the video and you saw in the simulation, they are going to be able to navigate the roundabout, making any turns that they need to. And because we're making the curbing on the median mountable, any emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulance will be able to mount the median and navigate the corridor however they need to. From a bike and pedestrian standpoint, this is something I touched on earlier. For bicyclists, they're going to have a few options. They're going to be riding in that 5-foot bike lane, and as they approach the roundabout, they're going to have two options. They can either take the lane and navigate the circle like a vehicle would, as you can see in the top right here. And that's going to be for your more experienced bikers, and for those that are not comfortable doing that, we're going to provide those bike ramps, which was that little gray ramp that I showed on the plans. And bikers can then dismount their bike and go down the sidewalk and cross at the crosswalk, similar to how a pedestrian would. For pedestrians, they're going to treat this just like they would any other intersection. They're going to come down the sidewalk, cross at the crosswalk. The biggest benefit for pedestrians is the decrease in the amount of the unprotected crossing distance. And when I say that, this is an example at the Asylum Street intersection. If you were to cross Route 82 right now, it's a 55-foot crossing where if anyone blows this red light or anyone makes a right turn on red or makes a left turn from Mechanic Street, there's a potential for a pedestrian incident. Whereas when you see the roundabout on the right side, you have two short 19-foot crossings with a pedestrian refuge in the middle where traffic's only coming from one direction. In addition to that, we expect the speeds in the roundabout to be about 25 miles per hour versus the high speeds of 35, 45 miles per hour plus that you guys see right now on Route 82. This is a traffic simulation that we put together that shows the same amount of traffic volume at the same time. One, the existing intersection, and one with the proposed roundabout. The cars here are sped up to like 6 times speed. This should show you guys a larger amount of time. That's why they're kind of zipping around. But all we're trying to show here is how the roundabout on the right can process the same amount of traffic as the intersection that's signalized on the left, just as good, if not better, than the existing condition. From an environmental impact, as you saw in that last video, there's not a lot of stop and go traffic at roundabouts. It's much more of a rolling queue, which is going to reduce noise along the corridor. It's also going to improve air quality by reducing emissions, and all your vehicles will get an increased fuel efficiency due to that lack of stop and go. And then the obvious one is that signals require electricity to work, whereas roundabouts do not, so there's a reduced maintenance cost in the long term for roundabouts. I did want to cover the right-of-way property impacts associated with the project. What you see on the screen is what we proposed last year. Phase 2 is in blue. Those are the property acquisitions we had, and then Phase 1 is in yellow. So I'm going to bring in the new design now, and you can see that with the removal of that roundabout, we're saving a total acquisition at that intersection. And then we were able to realign Dunham, and that saved a total property acquisition at this as well. And then on the bottom of the screen, when we removed that center roundabout, we reduced property impacts at Willow Tree and CVS. Just looking at Phase 1, we still do have 5 total property acquisitions, as well as 52 partial acquisitions or slope easements. Those slope easements are just required to install the sidewalk on either side of the road. As far as the totals, the total acquisition of the Shell gas station is required to accommodate that U-turn that I mentioned. That is space that we would need for the roundabout during Phase 2 of the project. And then the other 4 total acquisitions are required due to the inherent larger footprint associated with the roundabouts. At this point, I do want to pass the presentation over to Matt Giannakopoulos, who is our right-of-way expert, and he's going to cover the right-of-way process in a little bit more detail. It's just that
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Giannakopoulos. I'm a project coordinator with the department's Division of Rights-of-Way. It is our office's responsibility to acquire the property rights that are needed for transportation projects. As Mike just outlined, the proposed design does require the acquisition of property rights, including 5 total acquisitions. So I'm here tonight just to give a brief overview of our process and outlines some of the rights and benefits that the owners and occupants of the impacted properties are entitled to. One thing I do want to stress, though, is that we're still in the preliminary phases of design, so the actual property right needs of the project may change as the design progresses, as Mike outlined if you were here last time. Any property rights that end up being required will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes Sections 13A-73, 13A-98E, and the department must adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Properties Acquisition Policies Act of 1970. Once the design has progressed to the point where we know exactly what rights we need and we're ready to begin the acquisition process, each impacted property owner will receive a letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which will depict the exact rights to be acquired. At that point, we'll determine the fair market value of those rights, and we use that to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer gets sent out to the property owner in writing, and an agent from our office is available to meet with the property owner and discuss in detail the project, the impacts to that particular property, and explain how the state came up with the offer. The property owner will have a reasonable time to consider the offer and enter into negotiations. Once an agreement is reached, the DOT will prepare all the necessary paperwork, and they'll file a deed, any necessary release or subordination of encumbrances, and the property map on the town land records. However, if negotiations reach an impasse, in order to allow the project to move forward, the department may acquire the rights it needs through its power of eminent domain. And what happens in that event is the DOT files a notice in the local superior court, along with a monetary deposit in the amount of that state's offer of just compensation. The property owner has 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they thought that the department's offer was inadequate. Now, whether or not the owner chooses to use their right to appeal, they can apply to the court to withdraw that money at any time. So I know a lot of times people hear eminent domain, they think it means the state can just take your property for $1 and things like that, but that isn't the case. All property owners are entitled to at least that original offer of just compensation. So in addition to the acquisition of property rights, persons and businesses that are displaced as a result of this project are also entitled to certain relocation benefits, including advisory services. An agent from our office will contact each displacee directly, and they will discuss with them their relocation needs. They will describe in detail the relocation program and any benefits that the displacee may be entitled to, and they will assist in finding a replacement site. Displacees are also able to be reimbursed for moving and related expenses, and residential displacees are eligible for something called the replacement housing payment. That's a payment to make up the gap of any increased costs associated with their new housing, and businesses are able to be reimbursed for some expenses related to reestablishing them at their replacement site. So that was just a brief overview. Thank you for giving me the time to speak about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A and after. In the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to Mark to continue with the presentation.
Good evening. You should be commended for your patience in this lengthy but important presentation. My name is Mark Lenters. I was retained by the department as an advisor. I have about 35 years of traffic management, traffic planning, and safety audit experience, and particularly in roundabouts, about 20 years in roundabouts. I worked on the National Roundabout Guide that was released last July. We have a chapter in there that speaks to roundabouts in corridors. I sat on a panel in 2014 that studied roundabout corridors, and I want to share with you some of the highlights from the research. You know, when we do something like this, when the department embarks on an investment of your dollars into an improvement, you know, we use terms like data-driven and evidence-based. We don't want to experiment with traffic, experiment with new ideas that haven't been proven somewhere else. So their due diligence was essentially to look into, you know, where has this been done before, and how long has it been there, and what success have they had? And the news is quite encouraging, I must say. And we'll leave you with some facts and information that should help you be encouraged and get confidence that the solution they're proposing is a good one. So roundabouts in series. So a study of 9 corridors of roundabouts that were constructed over about a 10-year period concluded that travel times were improved, safety was improved, business access was improved, walkability was improved, and in all the cases of these corridors, the results were positive for businesses as well. Obviously, during construction, there's construction fatigue that sets in, but the lasting effects and benefits have been documented and are published. And I did that study with U.S. Department of Transportation. So I want to take you through an example of one of the corridors that was studied. And we don't have to go all the way to Colorado to find a corridor of roundabouts. There are a number of examples around the country, but this one stands out because the data has been collected over a 20-year period. And what it showed the city of Golden, Colorado, is that when they replaced traffic signals with roundabouts, they solved considerable safety problems, such as you have. They improved mobility, improved access, and the results were reinvestment and new investment in the corridor for commercial uses. So on the left, you see a diagram or a photo of the original corridor, very car-centric, not very pedestrian-friendly. The risk and exposure to pedestrians walking adjacent to traffic with very little separation, as you can imagine. The after case, coordinated driveway access, again, similar conditions to what you have. So when we looked to apply something in a case like you have here, we look for evidence of patterns of similar problems elsewhere. You know, that's our due diligence. It's our best efforts to apply proven ideas and technology. And the roundabout, of course, is not new. We have had roundabouts in the United States about 35 years, and in the rest of the world, many more years before that. 3 significant watershed safety studies of before and after safety benefits of roundabouts showed that they reduced crashes, and particularly injurious crashes, by upwards of 80 to 90%. So in this corridor, with no exception, improved safety by 50%. Travel times actually increased, even though speeds went down. And that's somewhat counterintuitive. You think, well, if speeds go down, it's going to take longer to get through the corridor. The difference was intersection delay was reduced, where they would sit at traffic signals, and you saw the simulation of traffic where they're bunching and grouping and queuing at signals and blocking driveways. In the roundabout scenario, the traffic just continues to move. That's the evidence we continue to see over and over again with roundabouts in corridors like this. So the department asked me to generate some additional data. When the question of too many roundabouts came up, we went back to look at things like travel time, safety, cost, right-of-way. There's a value chart on the left, walkability, placemaking, community acceptance, et cetera. And the conclusion we came to is the Mount Pleasant intersection was a bit of a standout. The 2 improvements are somewhat interchangeable. The roundabout is going to provide ultimately a little better safety, but it had a slightly larger footprint and a higher cost. So the median break with the left turn is supportable because you have roundabouts as bookends at either end of the corridor. So as you exit those at Mount Pleasant or the plaza, you can look left or right. If you have to make a left turn, you go down to the roundabout and make the U-turn at low speed. So this is a very common theme that we see in corridors. When access management, such as a median, has to be implemented to divide the roadway in order to prevent mid-block crashes as you have, roundabouts are the saving grace. They provide the U-turn opportunity and essentially mitigate the loss of access for those businesses. So it is a package deal. It's not just, years ago we did medians without roundabout as the option, and we would lose access to businesses, and the left turn would be lost. In this case, and we have 58 roundabout corridors and climbing in the United States, and they're all showing that benefit to safety without a loss of access and a loss of operations. So as you see in the phase 1, the previous conditions with the additional roundabout at Mount Pleasant, the Marcus Plaza signal would be taken out, and we would not have the new London Turnpike location. And these were rationalized on the basis of a number of factors: safety, capacity, cost, travel time, comfort, acceptance, aesthetics, et cetera. And so you see on the bottom image, the phase that's of keen interest tonight is the first phase that's from Asylum to Osgood, and with the Mount Pleasant as a median break, and then having the roundabouts essentially as bookends to provide a mitigation for loss of access. So one of the things that stands out in roundabout corridors and with roundabouts on their own is just the pedestrian benefits. In the diagrams on the bottom, you show a roundabout on the left, and the dots indicate points of conflict between users. In this case, motor vehicles and pedestrians. And on the right image, the intersection as we know it today with either traffic signals or stop control, where pedestrians and vehicles interact and have an abundance of conflict points, obviously implying a higher risk, a greater risk. And what's notable in this case is the speed difference. In the roundabout conflict pattern, where there are conflicts occurring, speeds are lower. In the traffic signal or stop control condition, speeds are higher. So when there is a pedestrian involvement crash, it tends to be more severe. And that's what our information is telling us. The little speed dials on the left tell us that when speeds are low and there's a pedestrian involvement crash, the chances of survival, the sustainment of injuries tends to be low. And so we're quite attracted to those solutions that reduce the kinetic energy involved in crashes. That's a term that Federal Highways has begun to pay more closer attention to. They want to fund solutions that reduce kinetic energy of collisions, both for pedestrians and motor vehicles. And the roundabout is a nexus of that interest in operations and safety. And as you move across to the higher speeds, we run into trouble with pedestrian survivability. And then the statistics back it up. So even though our intuition tells us that's likely, and if we've known anyone that's been involved in a pedestrian crash, the stats on the right tell us that over an 8-year period, a record of all roundabouts constructed in that 8-year period had no injury crashes, no injury fatals, I should say, sorry, percent of fatal crashes. And by comparison, the record for signal control and stop control intersections was roughly 16%. The statistic that I'm familiar with is about in every 10 traffic signals, there'll be a pedestrian crash for about every 10 traffic signals you have. We have about 4,000 roundabouts, and we've had less than 10 or 15 fatalities across the United States in over a 20-year period. So the news is out. It's good news that roundabouts are safer for pedestrians, and the walkability factors are excellent for this kind of corridor transformation. So the main talking point is this is not an experiment. It's been done before very successfully. Something that can improve safety significantly doesn't trade off operations and accessibility. Okay. Sal's going to talk to you about construction, duration, and maintenance of traffic.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the concerns that was relayed to us was construction and impact. Obviously, there's traffic disruption with that, and frustration comes along with it. So looking at some things that we can do, what can help. We talked about investigating some utility. So one of the things that we can do is there's going to be some overhead relocations associated with the roundabouts. So one thing we can do is relocate them ahead of time. A lot of times we have to rely on a utility company to move poles, and then every utility starting from the power down to communication to relocate onto a new pole. Takes time, weather events, things like that can delay the utility company, and then we have a contractor on board that's sitting idle waiting for those to happen. So doing them ahead of time is a good way to mitigate that risk and take advantage of a time frame for us to actually build what we want. So today we are talking about 2 projects, Phase 1 and Phase 2, with today primarily being Phase 1, 103-274. The other project, Phase 2, 103-275, will have its own public informational meeting, but we also did that to separate how much construction disruption there is when we're out there. So we hit up the Asylum intersection all the way to Dunham in a sequence. We start one intersection at a time. We wouldn't have 2 intersections being constructed at once. We'd get one to at least a substantial completion to allow the roundabout traffic to flow. then move down, and we can do other things while that's being finalized and traffic's still on it. For example, maybe there's some plantings that can get done while traffic's flowing around roundabout. So another good thing too that we're going to be implementing is a community business liaison. Scott had talked about that before, and this is going to be our way to be able to communicate directly with business owners and residents all throughout here while construction is happening. This is going to be the person that will really be the liaison with everyone and our construction staff, so that we can get relayed, hey, there's a problem here, and we can figure out a way to get that resolved. Or it can even be a look ahead type of thing, which we can also do on our project website. So it could be, we're going to be doing your driveway in the next few weeks. When are your deliveries? So we understand when we aren't ripping up that driveway. It could even be as simple as is there an event or something we need to account for when we plan our schedule for our construction work. One other thing is some partial night work. Obviously, Route 82, everyone knows, is commercially developed. There are isolated residential areas, but there's also residential areas adjacent to it. So we have to be cognizant of that, and we got to make sure we aren't running a lot of heavy equipment at night for them, disrupting them at night. So there are some activities we can take advantage of to get done at night, and that'll just help work kind of happening and not having to just work on a normal day shift. The other thing working with the city that we want to talk about is isolating side street closures to reconstruct that portion of the intersection. If we did that, we're looking to do a 2-week period, and it significantly helps because when you isolate the closure at that one particular intersection, you're not worried about having to accommodate traffic flow through it. So things like installing curbing and paving can get done a lot faster. So we developed what we think would be good detours. Everywhere outside of Route 82 has a substantial grid network. Everything kind of intertwines. People can manage to get through. So when we shut down, for example, Osgood here, people can use Beckwith and get on Peck and get to where they need to on Osgood. Or if people are leaving Osgood and need to get Route 82, they just go around the other way. Another example here is Mount Pleasant, taking advantage of Mechanic and Beckwith. We also want to make sure it's clear we wouldn't close more than one intersection at a time. So it'd only be one intersection that would get completed, and we can move to a next one. And these are some other examples with possible detours. I'm closing Mechanic Street on the left, Ann Street right here, or I'm sorry, Asylum Street on the right. So what's important on Asylum Street is we realize Ann and Pearl are narrower roadways, so if there's larger delivery trucks that for some reason need to get up Asylum, we can develop a signing plan that say to warn drivers and understand that if they're going to plan on taking Asylum, they're going to have to get down Newland Turnpike and get on Newtown to get to the Asylum Street where they need to in their destination. So cost and schedule. We have an increase in cost. Total construction cost now is $30 million for just phase 1, which is project 103-274. It is being funded with 80% federal funds and 20% state. And we are proposing for this to be advertised in the fall of 2025 for bidding, with construction starting in 2026. So the advanced utility efforts would happen the year before in 2025. So before we go into question and answers, I want to just reiterate again, today is phase 1, project 103-274. There will be a separate public info for 103-275 because that design is still conceptual. We still have work that we have to do on that one, and once we reach a certain level of our design efforts, it's the same thing, coming out to the community and having that public info. So phase 1 has independent utility. Doesn't necessarily mean phase 2 is going to happen right afterwards. There's still discussions on that. I also, at this time, just want to thank Kelly Magnet School for having us here. I really appreciate that we were able to use their facility and their IT support for tonight's meeting and recording. So I'd like to open up to questions and answers. Stand up, go to the podiums, and I'll call on either end. Go ahead.
Just want to make a comment about this design. I'm here with my sister, Susan. We own Willow Tree Plaza, Willow's Corner, Dollar General to Walgreens. If we feel it's like a double-edged sword with us. Not looking forward to construction side of it, with the loss of business with the construction, but also this new design, we were prepared to lose 17 spots. When we brought Harbor Freight into the shopping center, I disclosed that they were going to lose 7 spots on that side. I was going to lose another 11 spots on the other side. We're prepared for this. Now, the present plan is a right turn only out of the shopping center. We built a shopping center back in 1986. I went to Thames Valley, got out of Thames Valley, and roofed that store, the original store of my father back in 1986. So over this period of time, we built the shopping center, acquired different buildings, and built something we're proud of. The shopping center pays $250,000 a year in property taxes to the city of Norwich. $250,000 in property taxes. If I lose a tenant, that's it. So AutoZone, their lease is up in 2026. They are going to, hopefully they'll resign. They've been there since 1990. They can resign if they like, and hopefully they will. Walgreens is one of our busiest tenants. Harbor Freight has an option. Right now, Harbor Freight, the numbers have been going up. Instead of going up, their numbers are better than London, they're better than Wyndham. We like to have it that way. They have an option after year 7 to leave the plaza if the numbers aren't good. That's what I'm worried about. So again, losing that roundabout worries me. You have the busiest intersection east of Dunham Street. 2 main pharmacies, CVS and Walgreens. A lot of pedestrian traffic cross between the 2 pharmacies. More devastating than CVS. So with CVS, you can only make a right turn only coming out of there. You can only make a right turn coming into CVS. Same with Rodney's location. Like I said, we weren't looking forward to the construction process, but it was a reality to us that the roundabouts are going in. Now it's going to be devastating for us if we lose any tenants because of the right turn only exiting the plaza. I feel that the roundabout should have been not taken away from that plaza. It makes more sense to have a roundabout there than Osgood. I realize Osgood is in the middle between Dunham and Asylum Street, but the intersection of Osgood is probably maybe 1/5 as busy as our intersection.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming in, and it was really nice to talk with you and hearing your comment at the open forum. I highly recommend you submitting that comment too. Taking that comment form, everyone that has some, we really encourage everyone to submit them. And those are discussions that we're going to have after today's meeting. So, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry, this lady was here. I apologize. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a resident of Dunham Street, and while I understand all the concerns, especially of the businesses that are in the area, and definitely not looking forward to the construction phase, it'll definitely be a challenge, but I also think that it is needed. I mean, when you're looking at the 111 accidents per year, that's 1 every 3 days, and it is about what you see driving down Route 82. There's an accident every 3 days. So it is something that is needed. But I think my question is, how is the transition on either end? So like if you're coming out of downtown Norwich and coming up towards Asylum Street, it's a 4-lane road right now. Does it remain a 4-lane road?
So as you approach Asylum down here,
Yes.
it is a 4-lane roadway. So coming into the roundabout, that lane will end up dropping down, or the 2 lanes will drop down to 1, so vehicles are in a 1 lane as they approach the intersection.
Okay, and the same
So-
thing
and
coming
so
out
then-
the other side of New London
so-
Turnpike when it gets to that,
Correct.
that'll also
Yeah.
stay the 4.
When-
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for coming. Go ahead.
Am I next? Am I next?
Yep, yep.
A couple of things. Why did we stop the roundabout on New London Turnpike and our Main Street?
So when we came in June of 2022, that was a conceptual level. And when we heard from local leaders that there's too many roundabouts, scope was too big, we put a little bit more engineering time into that analysis. And what we were showing before, I believe, was a hybrid. And when we put some more time into that, it ended up becoming a full 2x2 or 2-lane roundabout. And that's a pretty big size in a roundabout. Would have a little bit more right-of-way impact. We were already acquiring one property at that intersection. But it's also, it's a more involved navigating in a 2-lane roundabout that we're not committed to providing that or proposing that at this time.
You're just not prepared to deal with it?
I wouldn't say deal with it. I think there's a lot of education with the public on navigating roundabouts, and 2 lanes ends up getting a little bit more complicated than a single lane. So our phase 2 has hybrid roundabouts, so there isn't 2 full lanes around it. And the process of that's why we started here, is to have single lane roundabouts first, get people used to driving roundabouts, and then when phase 2 is built, having a hybrid, it kind of is the next stage of it. It's kind of the baby step or the next step of getting into experiencing roundabouts. 2 full lanes, it can get complicated for some people that the department's not ready to commit to having 2-lane roundabouts in the state right now.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure you realize that we are a distressed community, and I think that roundabouts are certainly an answer for West Main Street. But I also feel like the state of Connecticut, as well as the city of Norwich, are going to suffer some tax consequences. The businesses that are disrupted in the sales that they would produce, has any kind of a analysis been performed to justify the tax loss to the state and the taxes lost to the city of Norwich, as well as some of the businesses may just close down? There was one business that's been in business for 25 years, and it's in that area. And when a group came down from the DOT, they said, "Would you mind moving out of town?" Well, that's not enhancing our business growth, that kind of an attitude. And I'm concerned about how that all happens. And one way that you might be able to solve this problem is if there was a fund, maybe through a grant application, that while this construction is going on, that there would be the opportunity for people that are suffering this hardship. And if you start at one end of the road and go all the way to the next end, up to the Norwich to London Turnpike, there are going to be a lot of businesses affected by this hardship. So if there was a grant available with restrictions, so to aid these businesses, so we would not lose these businesses to this disruption that may go on. And you may start in a certain time frame, and invariably construction projects get bogged down one way or another, and those companies rely on that cash flow. And has that grant opportunity been considered, or any kind of a fund been considered to aid in these businesses that may be disrupted? And thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I will have to ask other staff in the department on grants. I don't know if there's ever been a situation at a state level. I don't know if there's even something at a city level, but I do know there's a group in the department that works with grants, and I can ask that question. My contact information's up there. If you can send me an email with your question, I will definitely get an answer for you and respond. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I live on Jones Court, and I'm near the Four Corners. And, the devil is in the details. And in terms of, right now, I drive less. I kind of select when I'm going to drive because high traffic situations, and even if an accident happens in a roundabout during a high traffic time, I'm going to ask questions because, and kind of I had a list of questions and you have answered some, but I kind of get lost in the weeds at times, and that's why I want to be very specific with observations and those kinds of things. And even when I go to make a left, to go continue down 82, the other day there were 5 cars that ran the red light. And in terms of consequences, and I've seen, things that have happened in the past couple of years that have really changed things. And, even to put up cameras right now to get more data and even to train people, that there are consequences to causing accidents, in terms of, where's that money, because then insurance rates go up in the area with the number of accidents. People, I'll walk to ShopRite. I don't get that much anymore because I prefer to avoid, kind of traffic areas, parking lots, and people don't even stop when you're crossing a crosswalk. And even with snow, granted, we haven't had that much snow, but what do you do? At least on the highways, that's those snow plows, that the snow that's there is also removed. And when you have all these driveways, and how do you remove the snow? And it's these kinds of things. So I'm just wondering if now there could be kind of training, because certainly decreasing accidents, but even a 20-year looking at it, I think the last, 4 years, things have changed in terms of human nature, and how do you address that issue? So, and let's see. But even in terms of, even from Three Rivers, all the foot traffic, and people walking the road because, sidewalks are not shoveled. So it's all these things that, there have not been consequences for. So as I say, the devil is in the details with identifying the problems. And I'm wondering if cameras right now will give more data with what's going on and coming up with, kind of solutions, because there's no silver bullets. We have to keep improving what we're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, so the cameras, I just want to get clarification on the cameras you're asking for. Are you just asking for cameras for monitoring the traffic, or?
I would use it to monitor, to get more data, to actually see the problems that are occurring with people running the red lights, going very fast. I learned in before in the 60s to drive defensively. And, fortunately, I still have those skills, and that's part of why I don't want to be in an accident.
Yeah, there was a law recently passed for red light cameras. It does not allow for them to be installed at a state level, so that would have to get done through the city.
Yeah, I mean, if this is going to improve things, I think people need to be understanding that they're going to get dinged. I mean, even I was in California one time, and I didn't know about. You couldn't go to to pay the fee for going on that highway. They were all mechanical, and I received a ticket in the mail. But there was no way to get off that highway or no sign, so there are ways to do things. In 20 years, what happened, as they say, 15 years ago, is different than what's happening now.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely been a change. There's also a lot more traffic out here than there was. So we are trying, the roundabout there is a big deal for going that 2-lane. That's why we see that proposing safety improvement, but that's still in phase 2. That is still concept level. So we will be back for a public informational meeting on that project that once the design further progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I have a couple questions for you. You are doing a phase 1, and then there will be a phase 2 meeting and probability after that. Is there any thought process to see the data for phase 1, see what the impact it is on accidents, fatalities, et cetera, impact on businesses, collect that data before you, because it seems like phase 2 is going to start pretty quickly after phase 1. Would it make any sense to have a break, see if the data is showing what you think it's going to show with the improvement in safety before you start that phase 2 process?
And so right now they're scheduled to really start 2 years after, right? So, or phase 2 started 2 years after. The time frame in between, clearly, like as you were stating, is not a large time frame of collecting data, but we do have national data that we use and we've presented to show that the benefits are with them. What I do recommend though is submitting that comment, because that is something that we have internal discussions on providing with. But right now the schedule is to have them happen right after.
Because it would seem like the best data would be the local data. You can compare it to national studies, which are taken over. Some of the studies I saw up there seem to be older, but you would seem like a current study would be the best, resource to look at, is it effective or not? So, but thank you.
Yep.
My other question is, one of the attractions of Route 82 and West Main Street is the traffic count on the road for businesses. Have you looked at what the current traffic count is now and what you project the traffic count on the road will be during the construction, and then what the post-construction traffic count? Because you make it seems like from what you're saying is that you expect businesses to thrive after the project. So would you expect the traffic count to be higher than it currently is? So do you have that information?
We collect traffic data at today's situation or existing conditions, and then our planning department does apply a growth factor to our traffic counts. Sometimes it even includes if there's any major traffic generators that are being planned, and they take that volume increase into consideration. I do not have the numbers right here with me, and I don't know them off the top of my head, but we have the traffic counts for the entire quarter. So
I know you'd have it for current, but there's got to be some projection.
Yes,
there is. If it's 20,000 cars during construction,
it's
you're
a percentage.
expecting 10,000 cars. I mean, it does make a difference in thinking is this a good project or not. Is what the impact is going to be on how many people are going to be coming to the area during the construction process.
Yeah. So the growth factor is percentage based. It doesn't just doesn't add a token amount factor kind of thing. It's a percentage based factor based on a year. We determine that we calculate the traffic volume off of that existing base kind of model or base count data, and we do it for a construction year, we do it for a 10-year, we do it for a 20-year, and we design it based on a later year, a design year. We don't do it based on a current
But
data.
you don't have any of that information to share with us?
Right now, I do not have it. I'm more than happy to provide that with you, to you. You can send me an email, and we have the count data that we can give you.
Okay. And my last comment is probably maybe not necessarily answerable by you, but it's really more for the local city elected officials. Obviously, during the construction phase, the businesses are going to have less traffic, they're going to make less money. As the gentleman over here was stating that he has some leases that are going to be due during this process. They have the option to either renew or not. You know, you're assuming that the business counts will be down and it'll be questioned whether they do or not. Just recently, the city did a reassessment of property values. The property values on that corridor, I would assume, with less business, less traffic, would likely be less than the current assessments that have gone out. And my question would be, I don't know if you know the answer to that, do you see the values of the properties during construction phases less than they would be if there was no construction going on? And would it make sense to maybe hold off on the assessments of the properties in that area until after construction is done, especially assuming the fact that they're probably going to lose business and probably the business will maybe worth less during that time frame?
That is a
Thank you.
city level decision that I cannot answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yep, you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you once again. I know there's been a lot of specific discussions about what's going on or what is being proposed. I'm kind of looking at something now as one of the older folks here. I was here in either 86 or 88 when the road was made from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And I can tell you that from the time we opened till 4 o'clock, there was absolutely no business whatsoever. It was just a total ghost town. And I think every resident, every business is going to be impacted negatively during that time. You can project whatever you want to do. You can say this is going to happen. I think there's a thing called an apron, which goes from, I guess, connects the road to the driveway. I was looking at it at my store, and I said, it seems a little bit high. They said, no, the street will come out. It'll make it even. About 2 weeks later, they jackhammered the entire thing because it was not done properly. I don't know anything about it. I just know what my eyes tell me. And the general concept, and to me the thing that bothers me more than anything, you're looking at a problem, and we do have a problem. And frankly, if it saves one life, I think it's great, or makes life better, is wonderful. But you're saying the one answer to everything are the roundabouts. And what I'm telling you is there are other things. We alluded to cameras. There can be police patrols, maybe half an hour a day at different times of the day or night. Dedicated left-hand lane turns only. They have it in Coleman Street in New London, which has got a tremendous amount of traffic. It works. I have no problems going down in New London. Here, you're zigging and zagging. It's something that should certainly be concerned. To me, it's almost analogous. You come home, you see a fly is in your room. Close the door. What do? You get a fly swatter, you kill it. Your concept is you take a stick of dynamite, you throw it in there, you're going to kill the fly, but about 20,000 of his relatives are coming in afterwards with the hole that you made. I think that this is so ill-conceived. It just bothers me that you're saying, it's our way, this is the way, we know what we're doing. You don't have all the answers. Try these other things first. And I'll give you one last thing, just one last thing. It just shows you my craziness. My favorite movie of all time is one called Animal House. There's a scene in there, and it tells something about me, in which there's a pledge trying to get in a fraternity. He's bent over, he's wearing his underwear. Pledge master gives him a whack. What does he say? Thank you, sir, may I have another? And I feel what you're doing to us is you're saying, you're going to take this, here's another one for you. I'm asking you, reconsider, please leave. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead, ma'am.
All set?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's talk money. have in front of me, first of all, I would like to say kudos to the elderly population, those of us who have been around for a while and have seen things that work and don't work. I had a lovely conversation with Mr. Lenters, a very candid conversation. I understand progress. I understand that this is the wave of the future. But I also understand that for people in my age group, us 80 plus, we don't adapt easily to change. So I'm going to go back to my original statement of let's talk money. Today we are looking at a proposal for phase 1 with a projected cost of $30 million for 4 roundabouts.
That, just to clarify, the 30 million is phase 1 only, which is what you see on the screen right now.
Right, so phase 1 is $30 million.
Correct.
And that's how many roundabouts?
These 2 roundabouts
Okay.
with the reconstruction of the Dunham Street intersection.
And please bear with me, so when I need clarification, if you will provide that. I also have in my hand a copy of the 2022 presentation, where the cost was $20 million for phase 1. How many roundabouts was that?
That one did have the roundabout at Mount Pleasant. So there was 3 roundabouts with reconstruction of Dunham.
Please help me out here because I'm old. Phase 1 in 2022 for
Yep.
$20 million was for how many roundabouts?
So what I think you're asking is how it went up in cost. So inflation is definitely one of them. COVID has increased the material costs on everything,
Okay,
and even
so
labor with some stuff. So there was another round of
All right.
guidance provided. We were
All right, so
constantly-
let's cut to the chase. So you're projecting to start this project in another 2 years.
Correct.
Is that going to mean another 10 million or another 20 million?
No,
Logically, one would say yes.
The cost that you see there includes an inflation factor to it. And
Okay,
it also did in 2022 when we were here.
All right.
But since then, there has been more guidance provided to the unit who monitors all our bid costs that come in for construction projects and has seen the trend of prices going up still.
Okay, I understand all that, and as I say, change comes, it's more difficult for those of us who are older. But I see this as a, yeah, how are we going to pay? What are the associated costs with the collateral damage? You talk about community relations, liaisons, and ROWs, and who's going to pay for all this? And that's sort of a rhetorical question, because I know the answer. I know the answer. We're going to pay for it. Whether it's federal, state, or municipal, it all comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. And we right now, ladies and gentlemen, are in a sad state of affairs. Have you been to the grocery store lately?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, don't yell? Okay. I'm concerned about the disruption to the city of Norwich. I agree that Route 82 is a hot mess. It is dirty, and I believe it's a state road, so that would fall on you. It's disruptive, and in the long term, this may be a benefit to the city, but I have great reservations. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen in the interim. This gentleman said that he pays $250,000 in taxes. If we lose him, we might as well all just leave, because there won't be anything left. So I ask you to really consider more public participation. And again, I want to see a projection of the cost to the city. Who's going to, it's a state road, correct? So you will be doing the maintenance, you will be doing the landscaping, you will be taking care of the lighting, you'll be taking care of all those things, correct?
Certain maintenance activities do fall on the city.
Okay, so
So-
right there is a potential increase. Are we going to have to hire more public works people? Are public utilities going to have to hire more people to facilitate the infrastructure? Again, it's all about the money. If you have it, you don't have to worry about it. And if you're on the dole, you don't have to worry about it either. It's the people in between, the taxpayers. And we have a right and a responsibility to know what the projected cost is going to be. So do you have those figures?
I cannot answer whether or not the costs are available at the city level. The department will still maintain the plowing activities that are going to be required there.
So would it be safe to say, and can we agree, that there are a lot of unknowns here?
I can't answer the unknowns though, because they're at a city level. That's the only thing really. I don't know if the city has the resources in their public works. I don't know if they have the budget to be able to absorb additional maintenance costs that would fall on them. And the additional maintenance costs that would fall on them is going to be really the plantings that would be proposed. There'd be plantings in the center of the roundabouts, and then we were proposing street trees in the median. And those street trees really don't need a lot of maintenance. They're designed or specific species that are not going to grow significantly in size, so it'd be spread out. I think landscaping was saying something that needed to be trimmed in a 5-year period or something like that.
Okay, well, I thank you. I appreciate the fact that you have a job to do, but we as citizens and taxpayers also have a responsibility to have a say in our quality of life and our pocketbooks. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I know that I'm probably beating a dead horse. I just want a clarification of how come we have never really addressed all the aprons on West Main Street. I know when I take the apron into my own shopping center, and I have an SUV, that I have to take it very carefully and slowly, and it seems to slow up traffic. I know Minuteman Press must have the worst apron on the road. Wendy's. Why couldn't we address the apron issue first and try to fix all the business aprons? Was there ever a projection or a talk about addressing the aprons first before we started the roundabout?
Addressing the aprons right now are challenging to do on their own because of what's out there today with elevations of roadways and driveways and stuff. So in even correcting those, you still don't eliminate the issue you have of the left turns still coming out. Even though the aprons are causing people to be slowly exiting and entering, there's still traffic queued up in the left lane. There's still issues at intersections with safety and capacity.
And, I mean, I'm not very good at this, but example, like in Florida, you have these suicide lanes in the middle where you can actually take a turn. So if you're coming down West Main Street, you can't take a left into TJ Maxx or anything there. There's not enough lanes.
So the suicide lane, two-way left turn lane is what? A two-way left turn lane. Doing that right now would require us to widen the road more because without doing the roundabouts and having the traffic signals, we're still going to need 2 lanes of traffic in either direction. So we'd have to add a lane. That means widening, and I think our minimum standard is 14 feet for a two-way left turn lane, and it could even be a little bit more. I'd have to go back and check. But it is a wider than a typical travel lane, so that means widening that much more. More property impacts. Driveways could potentially get worse, and if they didn't, that means we're ripping up a lot more driveways in order to address it.
So it's more expensive to do it that way?
Not necessarily more expensive. You don't get the safety benefit out of it. It costs a lot of money, and right away you can more than likely end up taking more businesses because of that. Some properties, if we were to do that, they have parking along the back of the sidewalks today. If we widen the road, that parking doesn't exist anymore. And there's zoning regulations that would require them to have a number of parking spaces. If they don't meet that, they may not be allowed to be in business anymore. That's, again, another city-level decision that we'd have to go through a process of, but that's a risk with doing that.
I just found the aprons just such a big issue on West Main Street. I mean, every business I can just think of just going, the aprons are just horrible.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. Thank you for your preparation. I think the Department of Transportation prepared well for this event. I guess the thing that concerns me, and based on a couple of questions, obviously some other people, is that the thing that wasn't on the agenda, we talked about the utility costs. I did get in the open forum that the utility lines on Main Street are going to be replaced as part of this project, but we haven't really gotten a brief from the city on the impact and the cost of the utility line replacements and everything. And I feel that probably should have been included in this information session. And so the feedback I would suggest is, when is the city going to be able to brief us on the impact and what they're planning to do to coordinate all of this with the state?
I can speak to that, because part of when we were told that there was too much roundabouts and needed to investigate underground utilities, we came in, we did a series of test pits to locate the underground utilities. We focused primarily with the water. It was the most aging utility. So we have a ton of test pits. I think we ended up getting somewhere around 23 test pits just for the water main. And we identified that there are some shallows, there's some that's really deep. Primarily, there is no risk of damaging the water main on either ends of the project. So in this area right here would be milling and paving with some minor curbing reconstruction here that wouldn't affect the water main. And then right over here, the water main actually goes outside of the roadway, so that wouldn't get impacted. There is some risk with damaging the water main with construction operations, or even when we do our drainage analysis, it could potentially be in the way. So if
Right, but we're not just talking about water mains. I mean, you've obviously got to have water mains, sewer lines, gas lines.
Correct.
I mean, just on Dunham Street, just off there to the left as you're coming on to Route 82, there's a gas line station with an emergency generator and a pressure manifold for maintaining pressure during an emergency when there's a power outage. You know, is that going to be impacted? Does that have to be relocated? What's the cost associated with that? The other part is people have talked about the impact to businesses, and everybody's talked about traffic flow and everything like that, but do we have, and they've asked about numbers, and I think the numbers they're really looking for is there a percentage loss of business based on previous projects that we can anticipate? So can you say, hey, based on this phase one project, businesses are going to see a 10% loss in revenue, a 15% loss in revenue, but you're going to see a 20% gain on the backside. I mean, if there's been so many projects and you guys have looked at it, great, you've looked at it from a traffic percentage and change, but have you looked at it from what the business impact is and relative improvements or business losses? Do you have numbers on that that can be made available to these tenants? Because it's not just the business owners. I mean, the gentleman that talked about his property taxes, he's the landlord. That's great, but what about his tenants? And where are they going to go? And what are they going to do? Because it's not necessarily going to be so easy for them to find a location that isn't going to result in an increased cost of rent. You know, a lot of businesses that are renting are on triple net leases, you know, 999. So they're not just responsible for a monthly rent, they're responsible for all the maintenance costs and everything like that. So it's a pretty big impact when you're thinking about it. So I just feel like the traffic part was well covered, but the business impact information wasn't really provided in depth. Thank you.
Yeah. I will say, when it comes to the utility impacts, any publicly owned utility, so there's the power out here, the gas, the water, and the sewer are all owned by Norwich Public Utilities. Those utilities that get impacted by the project and require relocation, even if they're at risk, so the water main, I use an example because construction operations alone It's an aging water main, so the construction operations alone put that water main at risk to damage, right? We would end up relocating that then, and that would be 100% reimbursed by the state. It would not fall on Norwich to pay for those relocation costs. Anyone else?
So I'm speaking about traffic operations with the shopping plaza, Dollar General to Walgreens. And I want to make sure you see the big picture compared to what you have now. Coming eastbound, westbound into your plaza, it's right in, similar to what you have today. Except with the roundabout, your customers aren't waiting at the red light. Right through, easy access, right in. Very, very convenient access to your plaza. Westbound, coming through, we gave you a dedicated left turn lane just for your shopping plaza. Very similar operation to what you have today for left turning movements in. So you've got a right in going westbound, you've got a left in going eastbound. Stay with me. If your customers are exiting and they're going west, it's basically a free right. You got one lane of traffic, come out, make your right turn, go. The concern you probably have is a left turn out. That's really the one movement that's not here. But think about the way it is today. Remember the video in the beginning that Sal showed? I was over in this area. 80 seconds. That was your plaza, right? That was one of your customers. He waited there 80 seconds. Remember Sal said this seems like a long time? So what's going to happen in the future, your customers don't want to make that maneuver. And think about how frustrating it was for that person. They couldn't get a gap. They couldn't make the left. They waited, they waited, they waited. Ease of access, right? And ease of egress. Right in, right out. So your customers are going to make a right. They don't have a traffic signal to wait at. They're not going to have to be sitting here waiting for a light change to make the right. They go down, go to the roundabout, make a U-turn, come back. And think about that maneuver compared to the person that was waiting 80 seconds, right? That's right out, go down the roundabout, make a U-turn, come back. It's less than 80 seconds. Absolutely. We can get that data for you.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
A few comments. First, over the past few years, I've now been traveling Route 82 multiple times a day, often at different times of day. I've been making note of the traffic load. There are many times during the day when all 4 lanes are occupied by moving traffic, and these are in stretches where you are not impacted by traffic lights turning red. It's when they're remaining green. When you take those 4 lanes and shift it down to 2, now add in the complexity of you're saying everybody's going to drive slower, which means that you're going to have less cars per minute passing by each foot going down the street, therefore increasing the number of cars present on that roadway at any given time. That is going to impede, at the end of the project, that will impede further economic development along that entire corridor. That's something that's got to be addressed. Next, you're eliminating the pedestrian walkways that now have lighted things for traffic to stop. I understand that generally it's safer, but you're looking at a large commercial district, a lot of senior people, a lot of handicapped people that are going to be wanting to carry shopping bags and other such. I'll tell you, going 19 feet across is going to be difficult with that type of traffic load because people need to cross the street from one side to the other, not only going adjacent like you showed with that one rotary down by Asylum. They're going to be at a challenge for that. We're also looking at the length of the overall project. If you take phase one, add phase two together, all those businesses are going to be impacted not for 2 years, but more like 6 years in total. That loss of customers is going to be devastating. Each business that leaves ends up costing every taxpayer in this city money because we're trying to increase the tax base on the commercial side in order to support an overinflated school budget and many other costs that we can barely afford at this time. The city is struggling. We're a distressed community. That needs to be taken into account, the long-term impact of this. I know during the last presentation, when I talked with the folks afterwards, you have the relocation funds if somebody ends up being displaced. Unfortunately, you folks are just as eager to have them move out of the city as to stay within it. That is not going to help us out long term. Another thing that needs to be considered here is that downtown Norwich suffered greatly when the interstate ended up meaning that everybody going over from Hartford to Rhode Island or anywhere else ended up bypassing Norwich in favor of a faster route. Well, we're going to be seeing the development of the old state hospital property now coming up because the land has basically been cleaned. We have an opportunity to capitalize on a large number of people that would be crossing over the bridge and coming here. Well, wouldn't it be great to be pointing them towards this area? Well, for at least the next 6 or 7 years, this now turns it into another area to avoid. And other businesses will build where the traffic is going to be, not where it was, or maybe someday it'll recover. That impact is going to be felt by everybody seated in this room, and that needs to be taken into consideration. I probably won't be around to see the end of it, but there are a lot of people that will, and those are the ones we need to be thinking of. There's more, but I'll save it for a letter.
Thank you.
Good evening. A couple quick questions. You answered some that I had already through the other discussions. On balance, the roundabout at Mount Pleasant coming out and not at Osgood, was it ever looked at as taking it out at Osgood and leaving it at Mount Pleasant? And if so, what was the impact on your traffic flow as it adjusted through the different roundabouts left for left-hand turns by going through and around?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike, you take that.
So when we were looking at which roundabouts we could remove, the number one thing we were looking to maintain is our safety. And it was pretty similar between the two, but the other one is the mobility of everyone in Norwich. And if we're to remove the roundabout at Osgood, it's such a long distance between Dunham Street and Mount Pleasant where people would not be able to make a U-turn. And we felt that that was going to be a larger impact to the citizens of Norwich and a worse mobility solution than removing the roundabout at the Mount Pleasant intersection. So that's why we went with that one.
But initially, the base of traffic that goes through those points of contact, it's much higher at Mount Pleasant. All you're doing is shifting them out and dividing them between the two. From what you're saying, that doesn't go into account that if you're looking for the same number of vehicles driving in to that area, where the plaza is, and whether it's CVS on the other side, Old Times Restaurant, you're assuming that those people are going to continue to utilize those places for commerce through this model?
Yes, so the people that are impacted most by the removal of the roundabout at Mount Pleasant Street are going to be the people just downstream of where that roundabout was. So if someone's traveling westbound on Route 82, as soon as they pass that Mount Pleasant intersection, they can't make that left because we removed the roundabout, so they can go down to Osgood. But if that roundabout was there, as soon as they pass that roundabout, if they needed to get to any of the businesses past that roundabout on the other side of the road, now they can't make a U-turn at Osgood, and they have to go all the way down to Dunham to make a U-turn. So that's what we're looking at.
Is this a case where the traffic counts meet the design, or the design requires the traffic counts you're citing for the sake of reduction of roundabouts?
Can you repeat the question?
Your goal was to reduce the number of roundabouts.
Correct.
What I was asking is the reduction of roundabouts as proposed now from 4 from 6. Is this predicated on the new counts that you're assuming will adjust by going down to the next opportunity to turn around and come back because there's no left-hand turns anymore?
Well, the traffic counts would have told us how many of those vehicles would need or would end up passing and having to turn around and that distance. And it was looking at it on the feasibility and reality with it, and then the convenience, right? So if it's here and you just missed it, this whole distance to make a U-turn, if anything, I would say that makes a negative impact on the businesses, because if they missed anything over here, they may just fly by.
I can add, there's something else that is at work in this whole scenario, and it's roadway and street circulation. It's customary for cities not to restrict public streets, and one of the reasons is emergency vehicle access. That if the left turns were deprived for Crane and Osgood, that would be an awful long way for a fire truck to have to go. Even if they could cross the median, it's very undesirable. So we tend to preserve street patterns as a higher priority to commercial. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of how the public works, operate, and how plans are conceived for public streets in most cities and towns in North America. So if you have to make a decision on what's going to be restricted, you typically don't restrict the public street.
You heard from the operators of the businesses in that particular area. I can also point out, I just happen to know it's factual, that's the area where the most frequent crashes occurred. That area of the road, they called it Crash Alley, not a flattering thing, but I don't see this as a solution. I sat yesterday with many of you in Newington, as the city manager did, Chris LaRose, Pat McLaughlin, and we listened to your presentation then. And I came away with a concern that this almost is here, in my opinion, by design, and I'm not an engineer, so forgive me, but to meet the need to reduce the number of roundabouts, you've created this design. Whether it suits the city best, I can't answer that. What I do know is the interruption of sales is going to be great. And we're only talking about phase 1. I happen to know for a fact if ShopRite loses 10% of its market share, 1, they've told me it'll never come back, and 2, they're closing. Now, I learned that over 6 years ago. And that has not changed. You talk about distances in between. The whole damn corridor is only 1.3 miles. And since you've eliminated the roundabout at the 4 corners, it's more like 1.2 miles. And we're still looking at 4 eventually. But the interruption of sales, of life in general, of employment, I still think it's not worth it. I still think a calmer, slower process would make more sense to put the city through all this. I'm only speaking for myself here, but I sat yesterday. I appreciated the attention. The commissioner, the deputy commissioner were at that meeting. I don't remember that ever happening. You paid a lot of attention. You took breath, step back. We're a couple years down the road. I appreciate all that effort very much. I know you're out there doing everything you can sincerely, based on your information, based on your training. I get it. But I think it's just overkill. And that's just, again, I'm only speaking for myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
A little frustrated tonight. You guys have actually given us a lot of great information, a lot of reasons why we need to have this. It's going to save lives, not lives, but it's going to save car accidents. It's going to quicken the traffic. And I believe you guys. And I think maybe they believe you, but they don't want to believe you because they hate changes. And I think that's what's happening mostly here tonight is people just don't like change. Yes, this city is a distressed city, but as you've been listening, this is one of the reasons why the city will always be distressed, because Norwich is a no-no Norwich. We've had many things that have been brought up to City of Norwich to do, like the police department. We could have had some of Lisbon Landing. We didn't want it. We're saying no to everything, so my suggestion is just go back, let the city die away it's going to be, because it's going to die because nobody wants to do anything to help this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I don't want to see Norwich die. I know. I've been here long enough that it hasn't gotten better. But I am going to ask a few things, and I need a little help from my state representatives to do it. One of the things you mentioned was that you can't put the cameras on a state highway. Funny thing is that when I travel to Rhode Island and I travel to Massachusetts, and as a matter of fact, I believe there's something about trucks, too, that when I traveled in my little four-door car in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, they take pictures of my license plate, and then they sent me a bill. I thought that was very nice of them. They seemed able to track me down. Got a very clear picture of my license plate. Trucks, I believe. We still have weigh stations, but I believe there's something else that they're using in order to send bills to the trucking companies that use the highway, if I'm not mistaken. So is there a way that we can change the laws so that we can have cameras installed on this particular route, so that if there are speeders, there are people that are breaking the law, they can get their license plate and send them a bill. Send them the same kind of things that I get. What we need to do is change what's not working. Change what we know might help. Try different things. And my name is Beryl Fishbone, and I'm the one who sent you that very long list of suggestions, ideas, and questions, some of which you answered tonight, and I thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? I'm more than happy to answer questions. You guys have questions? You guys want to just speak? And, you know, that's why we're here. We're here to listen. You know, and I think we showed that we listened, right? We were too many roundabouts, too many business impacts. We went back to the drawing board and brought something else back, you know? So this is why we're here. We're here to listen. If, yeah, we've Yeah, the roundabouts really allow us to, the roundabouts are what allow us to go down to one lane. Once you have it signalized, cars are stopped, you have a lot of flow that needs to get through. But the roundabouts run efficiently. It allows all approaches of the roundabout to go through the intersection. Processes it very well. Go ahead, sir.
First off, I want to say thank you for that presentation. I thought it was beautifully done, but it's obvious that you guys are engineers and not giving TED Talks. But
thank you.
I travel down 82 every day, and I'm a victim of two things. One, an accident with my small child in the back, 3 years old, because someone was taking a left turn. Two, I'm also a victim because from 395 to downtown, there are 13 stoplights. If you hit every single stoplight, you're waiting an average of 17 minutes. It takes 16 minutes to get to Costco. Imagine that, just to go 2 miles down the road, 16 minutes. Roundabouts is something that people are scared of, they're afraid. And if we get over that fear, I guarantee you people can understand the benefits of having them. I didn't understand the benefit of having roundabouts until I lived in London, and to see how effective and efficient and safe they were. And I believe that once you install these, people start to understand as well. I'm very nervous right now because everyone's looking at me, but thank you. So I love this design that you have here. I have small children now, and now that I have kids, the city they grow up in means a lot more to me now. I want to be involved. I ride my bike with my kids, and to see this bike lane here, it means a lot because they love having the wind through their hair. And having safety lanes where people can see and know that people are riding their bikes, safety issue is wonderful. The renderings that you have here is something, once done, and if it comes to fruition, is that something everyone in Norwich can be proud of. Because look at it, it's beautiful. The plants, the trees. If you've ever been down Dunham Street, if you've seen the work that they've done, oh my God. If that's any indication of what this could look like, I believe it's something that people can be proud of. I think what you guys have going on here is something phenomenal. One, it's safe. Oh, the past 2024, if you live in the same city as I do, we've had blackouts due to torrential downpour. What is it like at an intersection when the lights are all out? Nobody knows how to stop. The rule and the law is, if there's no power, stop at a stoplight. What does a roundabout do? It doesn't need power or electricity. It's pretty self-explanatory. Imagine that. All the accidents that could be avoided during situations like that just by a simple roundabout. I really hope this goes through and that people can get over their fear, because once you start adjusting and you're understanding, maybe you can think, you know what, maybe my thoughts about this were wrong. It really is beneficial. I'm also a business owner, so I understand I understand all your business owners' concerns. But what can I say is that I really love this idea. I hope Norwich is open to it, because this is a place I love, and this is where my kids are going to grow up. And I want to make sure that they're proud of this city as much as I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. I'm going to see if I can get you on board to sell roundabouts for the department. I'm going to see if I can get you on board to sell roundabouts for the department. You're doing a much better job than I did. I appreciate your input. Thank you and support.
I just have one question. With one lane going each way, for emergency responses, let's say a car breaks down, there is an accident, whether it's a small accident, how do you plan on moving emergency responses to respond, let's say to a different event?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Mike just threw up something on the screen. So with the lane that we have on the shoulder, it's about 18 feet of pavement. So if someone gets into a minor accident, and they're able to pull over, any type of emergency vehicle will actually be able to pass them with the amount of space. And then, as I mentioned in the presentation, the curbing on that median is going to be mountable. So in a situation where they didn't pull over all the way, or maybe they got in the accident and they just stayed where they were, they're going to be able to mount up on that median and still pass. And that's one of the reasons that any of the trees that we are proposing in the median, they're going to be spaced far enough so that those emergency vehicles can make that maneuver.
Is that space wide enough for an 18-wheeler for a fire truck to pass it?
What was that, sorry?
Is the space you have in contingency wide enough if a trailer truck breaks down for an emergency fire truck to pass by?
Yes, it's
I
the same.
believe so, yes.
It's the same. It would be the same condition as shown in the images, whether it's a vehicle or a tractor trailer truck.
Yep. And any of the trees that we're installing, the species grows only up, so
So
the,
you have pliable trees?
I'm sorry?
what?
Because I'm looking at the space, the distance you're showing, it doesn't add up. I drive a truck, and that's just like a regular 2-ton, and it's wide enough where even when I pull over to the side, it's hard for the fire truck to maneuver. I have to get on the sidewalk for them to get by. So I can imagine like a trailer truck, like an 18-wheeler breaking down, that the fire truck would be able to maneuver around.
They'll be able to get over the curbing on the median, so they can drive around and use the median.
And
to
if,
make
if the whole lane was blocked, let's say it was a big 18-wheeler and it was taking up most of that 18-foot lane, we spaced out the trees so that an emergency vehicle could fully mount the median, go over to the other side of the road and pass that car in an emergency situation.
That's not going to delay responses to an emergency, like from roundabout to roundabout, let's say somebody break down and you have a person having a heart attack, or there is a fire, that's not going to delay the responses.
I think it'll allow them to respond accordingly. I mean, today, if all 4 lanes are backed up, they're moving through there a lot slower as well because they got to wait for each left lane. If the right lane's completely taken, the people in the left lane have to move over. They're having to watch for head-on vehicles if they go over the double yellow to get around the traffic in the direction that they're traveling.
Yeah, I hope this is wise instead of leading to losses of lives.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. It was a lovely presentation, as it was 2 years ago. And I was one of the people that was here telling you that I do anything I can in Salem to avoid the roundabout. I go down Rattlesnake Ledge. I go through the Chelsea Groton parking lot to avoid the roundabout because I don't feel comfortable driving in the roundabouts. And I have no citations on my record. I have a hard time judging how the person that's coming around, whether they're going to speed up or slow down. And it's scary. I don't know how people in Paris deal with the roundabouts because I stood on the sidewalk and I watched this. People are riding bikes and they're going around and they're around and around and then they get off. But it's not anything I feel comfortable doing as a Norwich resident. I think it's going to decimate our businesses. I will not be going to ShopRite like I did today. I go 2 to 3 times a week. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to go somewhere else to shop. I think it's going to be detrimental to our businesses. And I think we should try some of the other alternatives that people tonight suggested first.
Thank you.
I think the question hasn't been answered, how this is going to impact the Norwich residents. Are taxes going to go up?
Yes.
How is this going to impact?
I can't answer whether or not the Norwich taxes are going to go up by it.
Representatives from the city are here, and they're not answering the question.
I think Mark Lenter's here. I understand he showed something from Colorado, but there's a ton of support or data from areas where it doesn't show a negative impact to businesses with it. I know there's that immediate impact because there's construction disturbance, but that's going to happen whether we were proposed a roundabout, whether we did a whole new traffic intersection design with a new signal, or if we widened the roadway. All those are going to be short-term issues that are concerns and that end up happening as a result of the construction.
You're not a Norwich taxpayer, so you can stand up there and you can give your presentation, but we're the ones that are gonna end up paying higher taxes. Absolutely.
I mean, so the funds of this project wouldn't be coming from Norwich, so. Correct. This project is funded completely with 80% federal and 20% state funds, and any public utility that's owned by Norwich would be covered 100% by the state. So the city wouldn't have to participate in the funds for any portion of new water main, any new utility poles or power lines that have to get installed, or any new gas main, or any new sewer work. So you get brand new infrastructure on that, and it would be on the state's dime. Yeah, our handout, I believe, does have some guidance on that, and there is some other guidance available. I'd like, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I just have a question, and it's a really simple one, and I know that you're going to have to go home and find the answer for that. And that is, you showed me a lovely diagram of Colorado. I like Colorado, it's a great state. But could you show me maybe some places that are a little bit closer to at least New England, where we have some rather unique issues that they don't have out in Colorado? But just something that maybe we can go and visit, we can see how they're working when you're putting whole strips of roundabouts in. I don't mind a roundabout. I'm really not as opposed to it as I think I'm sounding, but I also understand that it's going to interrupt quite a bit of business, and even if those businesses are able to relocate within the city limits, one of the things that was suggested was that they would find a place to relocate along the 82 strip. Well, if I were in business and and my business was being relocated or my business was being interrupted because of all this construction over whether it's 4 years or 10 years, but it's a long period of time, I'm not sure that I would want to relocate my business along that same interrupted strip. Can I find another place that's got the same type of movement? Is my business, how dependent on traffic is my business? And Lord knows we have plenty of open areas and businesses and retail, excuse me, that's available throughout the city, but will it have the traffic pattern that I need for my business? And that's something that's got to be addressed prior to any shovels in the dirt. Thank you.
Yeah, that does get addressed. So when a business is going to get relocated, we go through a whole process for that. And I don't know if Matt or Mark or Matt, you want to, I think the right-of-way stuff, maybe we just hit that, and then Mark can talk about the other.
Yeah, when where the business relocates to is ultimately up to the business. You know, we don't direct where they move to. But the questions you ask, that's the kind of questions the relocation agent will ask the business, try to ascertain what their needs of the particular business is. So does a business need foot traffic? Does it want to stay in Norwich? Does it want to stay in the same area? You know, we get that information from the business, and then we search all the local listings to try to find available sites that meets their needs.
Any restitutions for the financial hardships?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Were there any restitutions for the financial hardships having to relocate your business, losing your employees, start over? Rebuilding your clientele base?
So the business are entitled to be reimbursed for the cost they incurred in moving. but there's also a separate category of payments called reestablishment expenses that the business can use to reestablish themselves at the new site. So they cannot be reimbursed directly for loss of business or loss of clientele, but they can get reimbursed to try to establish their business at a new site, whether that be, installing signage at the new business, updating, let's say they have stationery or business cards that need to be updated, we do reimburse for that. But we can't pay directly for loss of business, no.
Just a quick comment, because you've mentioned several times about providing assistance to businesses to move, whatever, with that impact. However, that's the business itself. What about the property owners that are now losing their tenants, that now have that loss of income, that now are looking at a 5+ year impact to everything that they do? That is going to have a devastating effect on the property owners on that strip. Never mind the future development once Riverwalk goes in. And businesses will choose to locate where the traffic flow is going to be. The people that currently own projects, land and buildings in those areas are going to be hard-pressed to be able to bring back some of those businesses when they've moved just 5 or 10 miles away, because that's where the traffic is. And it won't be in Norwich. We don't have the current infrastructure in another strip like that. And you can't tell them to move to Stop and Shop or anything like that. They're now in floodplains. There's a lot of work that has yet to be done to determine whether or not there's economic feasibility to the city to do this project. Now, I'm fully in favor of roundabouts. It was my committee that first came up with the idea of a roundabout in downtown. And a lot of businesses lost a lot of people on a daily basis once that roundabout went in. It's better for traffic, but it really sucks for the businesses. So we've got a lot of work to do studying not only safety, not only traffic flow, but impact to the community. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We can't hear you yet. Can I ask you to come to the mic, please? It's very difficult to hear you.
At the last last time we had met several years ago, there was a committee that was formed. There was quite a few business owners and residents that were on there. And one of the things that was studied at the time was there was a statement made by the state. We're talking about Colorado. I don't know if it was Golden or not, but talking about Colorado, they said that there was an area that was developed. They put in the roundabouts, and the traffic went down significantly. One of the individuals in our group researched it. The reason that traffic went down was because a sizable mall at the end of the street had closed. That was not stated by the state. So the idea of figures lie, liars use figures, I'm just saying.
What if the federal government doesn't come up with the 80%? Who's picking up that tab?
The federal portion of the dollars is always based on an infrastructure bill that's been passed. So the funds are essentially allocated. We end up having to meet fiscal year budgets, I'll say, and the money for it then, when we meet our commitments, is given to the department or to the state of Connecticut.
I think last year, Norwich didn't get all of the federal money, and they had to change what they were gonna do. So if they don't get all of the federal money, we might not be able to even finish what we started.
These funds are going to be out of the infrastructure bill, so they're allocated specifically for that. The funds you were speaking of could be from another bill for the city, but I can't speak to what program that they were getting their funds from.
There's been a lot of comments about businesses after construction as well, and is there a local model that we can look at instead of across the country? We have something close. It's small, but it's close, but it has pretty good data if you look. And a few of you brought up the roundabout at Route 82 and 85 in Salem. And if you look at the shopping plaza next to that, how it's doing, how vibrant, it's very well. And if you would have looked at it when the traffic signal was there and the delays and poor operation and traffic crashes similar to what's happening on Route 82 here, it seemed like pretty common 2 or 3 of those units in that plaza were empty very often. They were always looking to lease them. As soon as that roundabout was finished, about 2012, 13, Dunkin' Donuts moved in. They were one of the first ones as a new business to move in. Shortly after, Plum Tomato came in. Then there was others. And for those of you that drive it occasionally, you probably don't see any empty units. I go through it probably once a week, and I can't say the last time I noticed an empty unit in that plaza. Certainly, I think if you spoke with that owner, there's probably some disruption during construction. Everybody admits that. There's tough times during construction. We will do our best to manage traffic. Some of the operations we can do at night when businesses are closed, certainly a lot of the paving, maybe the concrete pouring, some of the most disruptive operations we could look at doing at night when businesses are closed. We can look at staging the corridor one intersection at a time so we don't tie up the entire length of the corridor. One of the benefits in your area, you have kind of a local grid, especially for adjacent residents to get in and out, which works pretty well. But as far as businesses and how well they do adjacent to roundabouts, take a drive over to 82 and 85 in Salem. It's 15 minutes from here. And
Make that part of your presentation then. You're talking about corporate businesses. We're talking about local people that lives here and try to thrive in their own city. You're talking about corporate businesses, Dunkin' Donuts. You're talking about from whatever tomato. These are not local businesses. We're all local people. If this is so thriving, put it as part of your presentation.
Some of those businesses, even being big corporate businesses, are using land on lease from a local resident. They're employing people in the city to work there. Even a small business. So whether it's a corporate or a small business, it's still a business. It's still someone that's going to want to be able to use a piece of property adjacent to it so that they can thrive their business in.
But you don't realize they get 10 years, the same thing that happened in New London. Pfizer came in, took everything. 9 years, closer to the tax break, they open left. Local businesses, we don't do that. We stick around because we're local. Corporate businesses, they take the tax break and they leave.
Yeah, tax breaks don't come from the state, so I can't speak to how they're going to operate in that manner. Go ahead, ma'am.
Salem Four Corners is one roundabout. One. You're talking about, first part of this project is 2, second part brings it into 4. In a row. Very different. Very different. People, they do 1, okay, you got to go around it. And actually, Norwich had a very early roundabout, the first one being in Mohegan Park. We've had it for years. People go around it. They do well with it. Okay? It trained many of us in how to enter and leave a roundabout. Not a big deal. 4, however, even 2, we need to see some evidence of how these other places are using them. And one of the other things is, in Rhode Island, when you see all those, they do have roundabouts, and there's a few of them in a row. But how you get around them is, the parking lots are all connected. You go into through the back of behind the buildings, and you can drive almost a straight line from one to the next. No big deal. You're not entering and leaving the traffic pattern every time you go to the next store. Just a thought of something that maybe you won't need to include or try out or examine when you're doing your planning. Just a thought.
Closest example that has two roundabouts is in Glastonbury, Hebron Avenue, and that's another good site to take a look at. That's very similar to what we have proposed here in Phase 1, and seemed like pretty constant business growth. You could call the city and ask how things are going in Glastonbury. The most recent business to come in there was Trader Joe's.
We'd like to see that. If you could make that part of your presentation or make that part of your site, we'd appreciate it.
It is your job to educate us. You're trying to convince us. So now we have to go and do homework for you. Educate us, convince us. That's your job. Just do it.
And the last thing, if I may, for just a second, I can speak loud enough so I don't have to go up there. You're saying that there's two in Glastonbury, is that correct? Why are we the guinea pigs with four? Why?
I wouldn't say, I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't put it as,
So you can preserve your job?
We're here to address a safety issue on Route 82 that extends for a long enough stretch that we see the opportunity to propose 4 roundabouts. That's why we have 4.
Presentation was great. Have the financial data and educate us. That's all we need. Have the financial data and make sure you educate us. We don't know any better. You're the expert. Educate us. That's your job. That was great presentation on the safety part. Was great. Educate us on the recovery of the financial failure we have or hardships we have to enter. That's your job too, right? Educate us. That's all.
any other comments or questions? I mean, there's still some people here. Apparently, if you have more to say, we're here to listen. We're not going to kick you out.
I hate to think that taking the roundabout out of my shopping center is for the state to save money.
It is not for the state to save money
Well, why did you take it out of the shopping center?
because local leadership.
Because we all know that that intersection is the busiest intersection east of Dunham Street to Asylum. It's, like I said before, it's 5 times busier than the one at Osgood. Why would you not put it back in?
So the reason, we have to take a look at what we're doing here, right? And that's access management. Number 1 is access management. We've got a lot of crashes in and out of the driveways, left-turning vehicles, similar to what we showed in the videos. The raised median is a great access management tool that will eliminate those left-turning crashes. Once you put in the raised median, you have to allow opportunities for U-turns. And you need U-turn opportunities at reasonable points along the corridor for all the businesses, driveways in between those areas to have reasonable access. And if you don't locate the U-turn opportunities at appropriate places, it creates a very long travel time between those areas that don't have the U-turns. So looking at the corridor as a whole, the place where we have the roundabouts makes the most sense for the corridor as a whole. And it still gives us the safety benefits that we need out of this project. So although the roundabout was removed at your shopping plaza, the overall corridor will be more successful with the placement of the roundabouts as we have planned it. Now, if you would like the roundabout put back at your shopping plaza as we had last year when we were out here, submit that comment. I mean, that was originally part of the scope. It was removed because of comments at this meeting It was removed because of further comments at council meetings and further comments from local leadership asking us to reduce the scope of the project. And we did. We reduced business impacts, we reduced parking, we reduced acquisitions. We're going to reduce construction time by pulling that roundabout out.
You're not wrong.
Submit your comment. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thank you for taking it.
Absolutely.
Did a good job.
Have a good evening. Thank you again.
You too.
Thanks for the IT support, guys. Appreciate it.
I'm just going to throw one